Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to part 3 of the tutorial for migrations in the Easy University tutorial project. And what we're going to do in part 3 is we're going to change the database. And we're doing this on purpose, okay? I knew when we did the original design that it had a little flaw in it. I had a couple of little flaws in it. And I left them there because one of the things that happens frequently to systems is that when you go to maintain them, you need to change the structure of the database. You need to add tables. You need to change tables. You need to do all that kind of stuff. And migrations are great for doing that. Okay, they're pretty complex. What we're going to do is we're going to change two tables in this particular part, and when we do that, we're going to do a combination of a schema migration to add a table, and a data migration to load that table. Okay, so let's talk about the changes that we're going to make. So one of the things you can see here, I'm showing you the logical database design for Easy University. And you'll remember that the semester table was pretty simple. It had an ID and a semester name. Okay. Now this is a classic unnormalized relation. And one of the reasons it's not normalized is that it's just a text of values here. And we're not really controlling the values. So if you look at the values that we have for semester, and let's go take a look at that. We're going to go, let's fire up the development server, okay, run manage pi, and run server. So we're going to fire up the development server, and let's bring our browser down here, and we're on sections now. Let's go to semesters, and interestingly enough, the semester list we have right now, because of the data migration that we did for semester, we've got 3 years, and we've got 3 periods in each of the years, 3 kind of calendar periods. And so the result is we've got 9 semesters. The problem is a user could type whatever they want to in here, okay? And it would completely break up the integrity of the data. All right. So that's the failing of just having this be a field that we can, because there's really two data parts here. There's a year and there's a period. Okay. And we really want to control those values. So how can we do it? Well, here's how we're going to do it. We are going to update the database, okay? And here is version 2 that we're going to work on implementing, okay? So the semester is still one of our tables. It's just that we don't simply type the value in. What we do is we have a relationship to 2 other tables. Okay, we have the foreign keys to the year table and to the period table. Okay, and the year table just has the just has the years in it that we consider to be valid. Okay, so if we uh, if we want to be able to work with 2018, 2019, and 2020, well, we might only have 3 years, 3 rows in the year table. And if we had spring, summer, and fall as the semesters, it just so happens that those are the semesters that the two institutions where I teach. Uh, well, then we would only have 3 rows in period as well. Okay. So the year is pretty straightforward. It has a primary key that's just your standard kind of integer surrogate primary key. And then we have a year, which is an int as well. Okay. And then the period has a period ID, which again is just your basic surrogate key. And we have a period name, okay, that's a varchar 45, okay, and that's going to be spring, summer, and fall. Maybe 45 is a little bit long for it, but we're going to leave it there for now. And then we want to make sure that these appear in the proper sequence. Now, if you look at let's just go back to the current data that we have. Okay, if you look at the semesters we have right now, okay, they come out in alphabetical order of the period, fall, spring, and summer. Well, they occur in spring, summer, fall, okay, within a year, and I'd like to get them into that order. So we have a part of our database design that is going to help us to do that. In that we have a column called period sequence, and this is going to be an integer value, and we're going to put a value in each of the lines, and we're going to assign the values such that when you sort it by period sequence, you get it in the order of spring, summer, fall. Okay? So, what do we have to do? Well, we have to do a number of things. We have to create the period table, and then we have to create the migration for the period table, and we have to run the migration. We have to apply it. Then we're going to have to do the same thing for the year table. Now, we're going to do the period table together because it's a little more complicated because we not only have the name, but we have the sequence. So we're going to do period together. I'm going to leave it for you to do the year on your own. Okay? And then after we get those two done, that's all we're doing in this part. In the next part of the tutorial, we're going to make changes in the semester in order to properly hook it up to these two new tables instead of the old version. And that's going to require a data conversion. And so the migrations for that are going to be more challenging. Okay? But don't worry about that. That's not till part 4. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to define the period table, and we're going to do the migration for it, and then we'll turn you loose on the year. Okay? So let's get working on that. Okay, so what's the first thing that you do? Let's stop our development server here. What's the first thing that you do when you are working on a, let's close that window. When you're working on adding a table, well, you need to go to models, okay? And we've got our 6 model classes. And now we want to add another one. We want to add the period. So let's do that. So I'm going to copy the period model class out of my already baked version, and we're going to look through it. So because semester is going to refer to it, I'm going to put that up before the semester. Okay, let's look what we have here. So, we have too many lines skipped. All right, let's look. Then we have the imports. All right, make the code a little bigger so you can see it. So the class is called period. Okay, it's a subclass of models.model, and it's got three fields. It has the period ID, which is the same as the IDs that we've been using. It's an auto field, primary key equal true. Then we have a period sequence. Okay, it's an integer field. It's not an auto field, so we're not auto incrementing it. We have to constrain it to make sure it's unique because we don't want more than one row to have the same sequence. Okay, so we want to be able to assign the sequence to get them in the order that we want, but we don't want to have two to have the same. Okay, and then the period name is just a char field, max 45, and unique equal true. So we don't want more than one row on the table to have the same name. And this is pretty typical of these lookup tables that we want to make sure that the values like the name, and in this case the sequence, are unique. That we don't accidentally get two rows with the same values. We have to create a string method, okay? And how we're going to represent a period, well, it has a period name. That's how we're going to represent it. And then in the meta internal class, we want to create, we want to add the metadata for the ordering. And in this case, we want it to be ordered on period sequence. Okay, this is what is going to get them in the spring, summer, fall order instead of the fall, spring, summer order. Okay? All right, so that's it. We've added that. Okay, now, one of the things that we would like to be able to do is we'd like to be able to see this in the admin app. Now we can't do that unless we add this model class to admin.py. So we need to register this period in admin.py. So we're just going to use the same code we're using for these other things. Admin site register, admin site register, and then let's say period. Okay, and we're going to have to add an import for period. So let's highlight that and do an alt return, and we've done an import. So that's done. So we've added that, and that means that we're going to be able to, we would be able to go, once we did a migration, we would be able to go and get the job done, right? We would be able to go to the admin function, and we would be able to add years if we wanted to do it that way. More typically, if we're doing some kind of a database conversion, we're going to have a lot of things to add. In this case, we're just going to add 3 years. But in a In another world, we might have 300 rows that we have to add. So we're going to do this in an automated way as part of the migration. We're going to do a combination schema migration and a data migration. Okay, we did the data migration already when we did the semester table. Now we're going to do something kind of like it. Okay, so let's start up manage.py. Okay, we've got that. And then let's show migrations. Okay, so for course info, we are migrated through migration 4. That was the semester data migration. Okay. At this point, because we've added a model class, we ought to be able to get, we ought to be able to do a make migrations. And we just want the migrations for course info. And we'll stop there, and it's going to generate a migration for us. Up here you can see it says create model period. Okay. Now I've got to tell you that sometimes when I do this and I look up in my navigation panel, I don't immediately see the new file there. If that happens to you, like it's happened to me several times already today, just do a show migrations. And you'll see that it's there, and you'll see that it hasn't been run. And if you look up there, you can all of a sudden you can see the file. That seems to be a little bit of a bug. It didn't catch us this time, but I want you to be ready for it. So let's go. So what kind of a migration is this? Well, I want to come up here and I want to refactor, rename this so that it has a little more descriptive name. I want to say something like it's both a schema migration and it's a data migration as well. Okay. Now what you're going to see when we open this up, let's open it up, is the schema migration's already been done for us. Okay, so that's fine, but we want to do the data migration to go with it. Okay, now I have a version of this in my already baked version, and so I'm gonna show you what changes we're going to have to make to get what we want. Okay, so let's give ourselves a little more room here so we can see. So we're running just one operation. This is the schema migration. It's a create a model. Okay, and it's everything that we just did to the model class is now going to be applied to the external database. Okay, that's fine. Now we're going to have another operation, and it's going to be a data operation. So what does it look like? Well, it's going to look just like it looked in the data migration that we've already done. Okay, so let's come here. And, oh, we did the year. I'm sorry. I didn't want to do the year. I wanted to do the, the other one. I did. So I opened the wrong one. All right. My apologies. So take that out of there. And let me come back here. And I copied from the wrong, already baked version. Please forgive me. It's been a long day. Okay. So let's put this in. Okay. This is the one that I want. Okay. So we're going to want, we've got one called add add calendar period. Oh, it's actually just called period. Let's fix that. Add period data. Okay. That was a change from before that I forgot to make. So no calendar about it. Okay, so it's going to be called the two functions that are going to get the job done, forward and backward. The forward one, add period data. The backward one, remove period data. Okay, so now I'm going to go get the code that makes the data migration happen. And I've got a couple of names to correct in there, but it shouldn't be too hard to do. Okay, and this is going to be very much parallel to the code that we just did for the data migration for semesters. Now that we're kind of fooling with semesters, one might think, well, geez, it was wasteful to have done the data migration. But trust me, we put just enough data into the current version of semesters to make our conversion work exactly the right way in part 4. Okay, so the two functions, I had them not perfectly named. Add period data, and this was going to be remove period data. Okay, and let's see if our references down here have resolved. Okay, so again, we've got the generated part. Okay, and then we've got the custom code part for the data migration. And then up here, this is going to be a parallel of the code that we just had in the semester data migration. Okay, so we've got one function for the forward pass, one function for the backward pass, the undo. Okay, and they're coordinated. And then we have a data structure in the top. It has a name that's a constant, periods, and it is a list of dictionaries. Okay, and one entry, one dictionary has the fields for one row in the table. Okay, so what are the fields that we need to put into the first of the rows? Well, we need to populate period sequence and period name. Why not period ID? Well, because it's an auto field. Okay, so that's going to be auto generated. Okay, so all that we have to do when we create the database object, the model object, is we just have to populate the two fields that are not auto generated. So the first one that we're going to add is sequence 10 and it's spring. And then the second one is sequence 20 and it's summer. And then the third one is sequence 30 and it's fall. And you're going to have to trust me on this. When we go to do the conversion of the semester table itself, there's a trick that has to do with having a temporary value here. So we're going to add a temporary value, and we're going to give it the sequence 9999. Okay, and when we're done with the conversion, we're going to take this out. Okay, as part of our conversion, one of the last things that we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this entry in the periods table. Okay, so those are the three. Now the one that you're going to do on your own, we're not going to have two fields to populate. We're only going to have one. So you're only going to have a single entry in each of the dictionaries. Okay? All right. So let's look at the add and the remove. So the first thing is we get a reference to the period class, and we do this in a different way than we do in our view because we want to make sure that we're getting the old version of it. So this is the way we get it in one of these migrations. Okay. So we get that. So we want to be using the period model class. It's part of the course info app. That makes sense. And then we're going to go for this period in periods, and we're going to create a period object. So we're going to call on the period class. We're going to call objects create. And then we're going to pass in the values for the two fields. Okay, and then we're going to get a reference back for the object. At this point, we're not going to save that anywhere at all. It's going to have created the row in the database, and that's all we need. Okay. On the remove side, it's pretty much similar code. Again, we have to get access to the period class itself, and then we need to go through this periods list for this period in periods. We retrieve the period object by calling period class objects get. So instead of a create, like we did up in the add, we do a get. And we only have to uniquely identify it. And because we have a unique constraint on period sequence, that's going to work just fine. So that's going to get us back the one object that we need. And then we're going to say period object delete, and that's going to go. Now, I have to remind you that you can only back this out without problems if you haven't eliminated any of the things that you added. Okay, so just remember that. Okay, so this should work. Let's give this a look, and let's do this. Let's go and do a show migrations, and you can see that migration 5 is now called a period schema and data. Okay, that's good. And then let's say migrate course info and 3 zeros and a 5. And let's look, and it ran. So it says it was applying migration 5 in course info, and that it worked okay. So if that happened, what should we be able to find? Well, we should be able to go to the periods, to the period table, and find 4 entries in it: spring, summer, fall, and temporary value. Let's do a run server. Okay. And let's go. I've made a decision that because these are kind of really deep infrastructure tables, typically we wouldn't want your average user to be changing the years that we're able to add semesters for, or the periods that are valid semesters. Okay, that would be something that a system admin would do. Okay, wouldn't be done by your average user. Okay, so what we're going to do is that these two new tables, we're not going to build all of the app infrastructure for us. So we're not going to build we're not going to build a list. We're not going to build a detail. We're not going to build a create. We're just going to rely on the admin app, because who is going to work with those tables but an admin? Okay. So here's the admin. Let's get logged in. Okay. And as you can see that there's an entry here for periods, and we go there, and it's just what we wanted. Okay. Spring, summer, fall, temporary value. So let's look at spring. Just it has the sequence is 10 and has the value spring. All right. And let's look at summer. It has the sequence 20 and it's summer. It's beautiful. That's just what we wanted. Let's click on fall. It has the sequence 30 and it's fall. That's perfect. And then let's look at the temporary value. It has the sequence 99 and it's a temporary value. And if you go back here and look at those, you can see that we're in the order of the sequence. Okay, so this is going to help us when we get back into the custom application to get the semesters to list in the order that we want, which is spring before summer before fall. Okay, so we've got a lot of that going. All right. So that is all the work that we're going to do for a period. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to you. And as you're part of part 3 of the tutorial, you're going to do this for year. Okay? So remember, you have to go into the models.py and you have to add the code for the year model class. It's got 2 fields. The first one is an auto field. The second one is an integer field. Okay, so you have to do that. Then you have to remember to go to the admin application and register the class so that you are able to use it with admin. All right. Then you're going to have to remember to generate a migration by doing a make migrations for course info, at which point it's going to create the next one. In mine it's 0006, but in yours it might have another number. Okay, and it's going to say year. And then you're going to have to change the name so it says year, schema, and data. And then you're going to have to open that up, and you're going to be able to do kind of a companion thing here. You can clone the code that we have for this data migration for period, which is this. You can clone that, and you can use that to create the code for year. And remember, year only has one field to populate. That's all you need. And what are the years that we're looking for? Well, if you remember back to what we put into the original version of the table, 2018, 2019, 2020. So you'll be adding uh, um, you're going to be adding to that, you're going to be adding 4 rows, okay? You're going to also have to add a temporary value there too. So this is great code to clone into the code that you're going to use for year instead of for period. Okay? Good. So I'm going to leave you with that, and I'm going to say bye until we're back in part 4. Bye for now.